What's up, good people? Jeff C. here. I'm going to be doing a special sort of analysis and review of the 2018 film Halloween. And we're going to look at some of the elements that are being programmed through your entertainment, dealing with the New World Order. So this is a little bit different type of review. If you've clicked on this and you're not used to my type of content, stick around. I'll teach you a few things. Now, saw this film last year, saw it again recently, and felt the need to come in and offer some criticism about this film. Now, I'm a fan of the original. I think most people, most horror fans probably love the original Halloween. It's a very spooky, sort of simple horror film from the late 1970s. Has great atmosphere, a very simple story. It's well filmed. I think, the use of the camera, especially in one of the opening scenes where there's this real lengthy, kind of a Martin Scorsese style before he really got into that, where you follow the killer through the house sort of thing and through the backyard and all that. Really creepy atmosphere. Maybe overrated in a lot of ways because it's just a simple sort of slasher film. It just had that style. I think the soundtrack worked really well. In fact, the stories revolving the original Halloween, when it was first released to the studio, or the studio first watched it, they were not at all impressed. And it was only when Carpenter made the came back with the piano sort of soundtrack and put it in that, oh wow, now it works, sort of thing. So the soundtrack and the way it's filmed really worked well. It wasn't gratuitous. It was before. It really kind of created the whole slasher, genre of films. Not that it was the first. In fact, if you watch a Canadian film called Black Christmas, which came out a couple years before, you can see how heavily it influenced John Carpenter and the film Halloween. Not that, Halloween's definitely a superior film, but you see a lot of the elements that are used in that film Black Christmas, including the eye watching from the eyes of the predator sort of thing, the killers, watching from the eyes of a mask and stuff like that, which is really creepy. Anyways, so yeah, I'm a fan of the original. I've watched it many times, and I enjoy the first two. Actually, I enjoy Halloween 1 is the best one, and then Halloween 2, I would say, is the second best one. And it's just, they're good to watch back to back because they're very similar in style. I know the first one's more well done, it's more original and all that, but the second one is just a perfect complementary piece to the original film, and it kind of wraps it up all nicely. And they should have just left it at that, really. And then they came out with Halloween 3, which didn't have Michael Myers and kind of bombed, and is actually a fairly cool film that takes on a completely different type of story, but it revolves around Halloween. Yet it was not well received when it came out. I think it's got a much better reputation these days. I think the fourth one was cool too, because it was kind of a reboot of the series, and they came back and they got the atmosphere down, they got the shape down, kind of thing, and they should have just left it at that. But it's been rebooted so many times that it could be complicated for people who don't follow Halloween. In fact, I've got a chart here, the Halloween franchise continuity guide, which is it can be confusing because it's like, WTF, how many different Halloween films are there? Well, there's a lot, right? And so the original one right here, and this latest one is supposed to be a direct sequel, which ignores every other film that came out. All these other films that came out is ignored by Halloween 2018. So they just pretend that nothing happened. So if you follow the original timeline, you go from Halloween from 1978 to Halloween to 1981. This is the one I recommend to watch right after you watch the original Halloween. Then you would skip maybe the third one, unless it has nothing to do with Michael Myers, so it's a completely different story. Yet it's a pretty cool little movie in itself. But if you want to just follow the Michael Myers thing, then you would go to the reboot that happened in 1998 here, which is Halloween 4, which is actually pretty good. And then it dips significantly with Halloween 5, and then I never even watched this one. It just totally lost interest. And then you can come from here for Halloween, go to Halloween 2, and then you can go to Halloween H2O, which is another kind of forgettable sort of extension of the Halloween, where they bring back Jamie Lee Curtis. And that is supposedly a direct sequel of Halloween 2, and it ignores Halloween 4, 5, and 6. And then there's another one called Halloween Resurrection, which I don't think I've ever seen that one either. I've seen this one, and as I said, it was forgettable. It was just whatever, take it or leave it. And it's kind of, I imagine there's things there to examine. And then there's the Rob Zombie movies, which are, if you like seeing the most stereotypical, idiotic sort of white trash depictions of like the worst possible people you could possibly imagine, then go watch a Rob Zombie film, because that's his specialty. I don't know what his deal is, White Zombie. I've never ever been a fan of Rob Zombie in any way, shape, or form. So he has a couple movies that he came out with where he had to give Michael Myers a backstory, and his backstory is that, of course, he's brought up in a white trash family. And again, it's like they're not even human beings the way that they're depicted. It's like, do people like this actually exist? I imagine maybe they do, or there's shades of them, but it's hard to imagine that anybody that could be as awful as the family that Michael Myers comes from could actually function in society and somehow stay alive, sort of thing. But nonetheless, so for our purposes, the 2018 film is a supposedly official sequel to the original. So it ignores Halloween 2, which I think is silly. I think if they were going to do it, they should have kept the storyline of Halloween 2, which in Halloween 2, just in case you're wondering, the character Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode, is revealed to be Michael Myers' sister, and that's why he's obsessed with trying to kill her, and explains. So they get into Sam Hain, they get into some of the rituals, which they explore a lot further in Halloween 3, but it has nothing to do with Michael Myers. But they bring in some of the mythology revolving around Halloween itself, right? Hallows Eve and all that. Anyways, so let's get back to it here. I want to talk about this film because I found it, I'll be fair. There are some good moments in this film. There are some well-shot scenes. They have one of the guy that originally played the Shape, Nick Castle, come back and do some of the scenes. There's a few scenes that I thought were really well done involving Michael Myers, but I think the movie is terrible for the most part. And what I find very disturbing about this movie is its depiction of men. In fact, it's an unbelievably slanderous sort of depiction of white men, and that's going to be the theme of this review, because I imagine you could go back to a certain point in time, probably in the 1970s, the slasher flicks, maybe the Friday the 13th and stuff like that. And you could say at times women in movies have been portrayed stereotypically as, brainless and sobbing, screaming and all that. You could probably, do that. So some people might excuse this and say, well, it's about time that men are given the rim job by Hollywood, and well, I mean, it's nothing new these days, of course, but it's about time, Me Too, time's up, all this thing. But it's so overboard and it's so toxic the way that the males are depicted in this film. I mean, there is not one male character in this film that has a shred of decency in them. In fact, they're all basically slime. I guess maybe you could say the sheriff might be the only character that might be, kind of level somewhat. But all the male characters in this are worse than useless. So this film has a very strong feminist vibe, very strong. The generation of the three, Laurie Strode, her daughter, and then her granddaughter are like the three core sort of players in the film. And they're always depicted as being victims first of males, or having to be stronger than males around them, or all the males around them are absolutely useless or worse than useless, and so they have to take matters into their own hands. So this is the main theme that I saw from this film. Now, it's important to point out one of the scenes before I go any further, because I don't want to forget it, which is a scene which is not featuring the main characters. And again, I can't show you this stuff because you know how it works with the censorship and YouTube and all that. There's a scene with a father who's driving with his son, and they're coming back from shooting practice. And the son is saying this to his dad. He's saying, "Dad, you know, I don't want to do shooting practice anymore. I'd much rather be in dance class." And the father's like, "Oh, are you sure?" and all this. And the son's like, "Yes, you know, because it's taking me away from my dance class and what I want to be doing." And anyways, so to make a long story short, minor spoiler here, the son, like they come across the bus that Michael Myers was on, because of course, if you're going to transport the guy that did the massacre on Halloween, 40 years ago, according to the story, the best time to do it is on the day of Halloween, right? Put him on a bus with a bunch of other freaks, and just nothing bad could possibly happen. Of course, the bus crashes. So this father is driving in his pickup truck with his son, and his son is telling him how much he'd rather do dance class than shooting, and that he doesn't really like guns. And then, so they come across the bus, the father gets out to go investigate, the son is left in the car, and then the son is worried about what's happened to the dad, so he pulls out the gun and he goes out to follow him. He ends up shooting a guy. Not Michael Myers, he ends up shooting somebody else, sort of thing. And then they both end up dead. So, and it was just, it's such a stupid scene. And you'd have to think of the writers. There's a guy named Danny McBride, not sure the tribe, but the writers behind this film are just terrible. They're terrible. I could write a better film, sitting on the john in 5 minutes than what they wrote here. I could write a better script for this. This thing, it was just awful. So much of it was an insult to the original film. And the original films are so overhyped and so over romanticized for so long that they have built this train of, where are they, all these films. Like, really, it should have just ended on the second one. Maybe the fourth one, that would have been all right. It's pretty cool. People that were disappointed by part 3 finally got the conclusion that was worthwhile. But money, of course, and Hollywood is just a wasteland of recycled ideas of mind control, basically. So if they figure, well, we can just put out another Michael Myers film, we can get Jamie Lee Curtis to reprise her role for the umpteenth time. Well, it's the 4th time, I guess, right? She did the original, then she came back for this, and then I think she was in this one. Yeah, she was in that one as well, and now she's back again, sort of thing, right? Because they know that people have that sentimental sort of nostalgia for the original. And so, Laurie Strode is back. Laurie Strode. I mean, she was just a girl, basically, in the first one. And she played the role well, right? But it wasn't like anything deep or anything. It was just a teenage girl who was a bit socially awkward and, just happened to be in the original film in the wrong place at the wrong time, sort of thing. But somehow she used her wits to survive. And maybe you could make the strong argument that maybe just the first film and that should have been it thing, but that's not how it works, right? Everything gets sequels. Even terrible movies get sequels all the time, because they know that the people will come back and people will pay and people will watch, and they know that they've programmed people massively with nostalgia, suspended childhood, something I covered so much on Supreme Lord Commander over the years. The dumbing down of the masses and getting them when they're young. They want you to see these films as young as possible so that you grow up with them embedded in your memory, in your brain, so that whenever they come out with a new iteration or a new spin-off or a new TV series, you'll be, you'll want to go and see it because you'll want to rekindle that memories that you had, the shock and the horror that you felt. Like, because an important thing to point out is that horror films are like roller coaster rides. I'm a big horror film fan, so I should admit that while I can still be critical of horror films at the same time. I grew up as a kid not watching television, but watching horror films and action films and stuff like that, sci-fis. I was going to the movie rental place sort of thing, and taking out the movie sort of thing. That was where I saw so many of these horror films growing up. And yeah, I can go back and look at them now and give a different sort of perspective. I think things have changed dramatically in Hollywood. So if you're an average person, you're coming in here and you haven't listened to my work before, there's only like 5 corporations that basically can control all your media. So Disney is one of the biggest players, and they own all kinds of affiliates. So they own Marvel, they own Star Wars, they own National Geographic, they own ABC News, they own ESPN, they own all these different things. So it's no longer some individual project, that might have been financed. In fact, the original Halloween if I'm not mistaken, might have been financed largely out of John Carpenter's pocket, because the studios didn't want to get on board at first, and so he had the idea. And actually, the name Halloween was suggested. It was going to be called the Babysitter Killers, by the way. And then I think it was his partner / wife or girlfriend at the time who said, well, what about if we set it in Halloween and we call it Halloween? And then they went and they checked and they found out, hey, guess what? There's no film. Nobody owns the copyright to the Halloween, so let's call it that. It was a smart move, and it became a cult classic, or a hit, and bigger than a cult classic. It became a franchise, right? Which, for better or for worse, largely for worse sort of thing. But the themes in horror films, which I won't get into this, but in the slasher films, the basic theme is generally depopulation. So in a lot of slasher films, it's the people who have sex. In fact, Scream kind of parodies that, illustrates those concepts, the self-awareness in the horror films of the people that are stuck in a horror film themselves. The Cabin in the Woods. There's other examples of that, where you kind of break the fourth wall to a certain extent, and your characters are involved in some sort of real life horror set, right? But are applying the rules or going by the guidebooks of previous horror films. So one of the things they always say is don't have sex, because anybody who has sex in one of these slasher films always dies. So one of my theories dealing with a lot of the slasher films coming out of Hollywood, who controls Hollywood? Well, it's Hollywood, right? The people that control it are not good people, and they want to depopulate the planet, amongst many other things. And they're the ones that are pushing all the gender confusion and the LGBT, WXYZ, and all these different things. So it wouldn't be a stretch to suggest that in many ways, a lot of these films are designed to program people away from having sex, for instance, having children, having families, developing monogamous relationships. In fact, there's a film called It Follows, which is a pretty well done horror film that, it's an STD, basically, a sexually transmitted disease that manifests in some sort of entity, and you can only pass it through sex. So again, emphasizing don't have sex sort of thing, or don't have heterosexual sex. So anyways, that's a whole nother story. So let's get back to the Halloween film here, the new iteration here, and talk about some of the things that I saw in this film that I think are rather troubling. So I mentioned the writers before dealing with this. There's not a lot of images that come up aside from the Michael Myers character himself. One of the things to mention is the Whiteface, which I've talked a lot about recently. And you know how you're always being told how evil and awful blackface is? Well, whiteface is all around you. And I showed this the other day. I'll just show it quickly. I'll just put clowns, right? Clowns are always whiteface. So the people that control us, this is how there's always a reversal, right? So if we put clowns or we put clown movies, right? They're all around you these days, and it's always a whiteface. So this is the reversal of the blackface. So black face, right? This is how they do it, right? They pit everybody against each other, and they always, one of the targets obviously is whites, and white heterosexual men are a huge target. So that Michael Myers himself sports the original mask, and it was brilliant. The original mask, why does the Michael Myers mask work so well? Because if you don't know the story, they had some other mask, and then they tried it out, and then somebody went to the store, and there was a William Shatner mask. So they took that mask and they painted it, right? Painted it white or whatever, and then they liked it because of the way it turns up on the film. If you're filming at night, a white sort of face really lights up. So if we look at the original Halloween here, right, you see these excellent examples. That's the William Shatner mask, basically, right? And it just works well with a film that in some ways is kind of a film noir. It's not officially a film noir, but there are so many scenes that are done in the darkness where a white mask like this really works. So I don't believe that the original had that sort of idea in mind about the white face. I think that was just a convenient thing that happened at the time. But in this one, I would say without a doubt, there is the white face being employed, and it's being employed. Again, the women are the heroes in this film. The women are the strong characters. The males are revolting. I mean, there are terrible characters in this. The teenage daughter and her friends, the men are more feminine than the women, or the boys are more feminine than the women. In fact, there is a dance scene here in this film. I don't know where I have it. Yeah, here it is. So you see here, this is the daughter, this is the granddaughter character. So she's like the granddaughter of Laurie Strode, the Jamie Lee Curtis character. And they go to a ball, a Halloween ball, and she goes with her boyfriend as Bonnie and Clyde, but of course she's Clyde and he's Bonnie. I think I have some photos here of this, yes. So here's an example of how the role reversal works. So in the film, they show them at the ball, and there's all kinds of Baphomets around them, and all the men are basically dressed as women, and all the women are dressed as men. So who runs Hollywood? What are they trying to do? Now, an important thing to point out about this relationship here, these two characters, you don't really get much of a story. It's so badly written as well. But you see that these two are lovers sort of thing. And then all of a sudden at the Halloween ball that they're at, she goes to use the washroom. And she comes back and he's kissing some other girl. Just like that. There's no build-up. There's no nothing. You don't see this woman character, the girl that he kisses before. There's nothing to set it up. And then he gets in an argument with her, and he ends up tossing her smartphone in the pudding sort of thing. So this sets up the whole thing where she has no way to connect with her mother, her grandmother, while she's being chased by Michael Myers later, or calling the cops. So they had to set up this scenario. But it's just an example of how the role reversal is always present. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So if you're somebody that's not used to my work, and you look on YouTube and you see, well, all the top men on YouTube are putting on makeup and dressing up like girls. That's a fact. That you could take it to the bank, right? That's a fact. And you might be like, yeah, okay, give me some examples. Well, I'll say Jeffree Star. I mean, look, they tell you right away, right? This is a perfect example. This is one of the most popular YouTubers. Is promoted all the time by YouTube, and he's, in my opinion, he looks like a full-blown Satanist, and probably is. Shane Dawson's another example. James Charles, of course, is another excellent example. And all these characters are the same. They're promoting Satanism. They're reporting role reversal. In fact, James Charles always calls his listeners, "Hi, Fifth Earth." So this is part of your New World Order programming, the rainbow sort of eugenics of the New World Order, where they're taking control of human reproduction. So they're pitting men against women. They're turning men into women. That's what they want to do. And they want to turn women into men. So everywhere you look, women are adopting the male characteristics. And this has been huge in your films. In fact, your female heroines here, maybe I'll put that in. male heroines here that we could see in movies more and more these days, over and over again, are adopting male roles. You got your Wonder Woman, WW33, Miss Israel, right? Gail Gadot playing Wonder Woman. You've got all your different characters, your She-Hulk, all these characters now that are adopting the male characteristics. So they're beaten up. This is your Marvel Disney comic book universe where the women are strong and they're fighting, and now they're the leaders, and now they're fighting and they're winning. I just saw recently the Dark Crystal series, and the same theme. You get the same theme in everything, right? Women are taking power, girl power, the Spice Girls. They've been programming women into being men for generations, and they've been doing the same thing with the men, or the opposite with the men, where the men are being programmed into women. This is what your New World Order is. They're deconstructing the family. So they don't want people to adopt traditional family type roles. So being a strong patriarch or a strong male type figure in movies is not being depicted. And if you have a strong character, usually it's like a Dwayne Rock Johnson, right? And he's usually taking orders from his daughter or his son, right? Who is more clever. This is a typical Hollywood trope. Like, Hollywood always pushes that the children are way smarter than the adults. And this is the divide and conquer that you see everywhere. Greta Thunberg is an amazing example of it. An actor playing a role in which she is basically, lambasting all the older generations for not giving a FUCK about climate change. And she's just an actor from a family of aristocratic family from Sweden that's connected deeply to the New World Order, basically. So this is just your divide and conquer, and the strong female characters. A great example of that would be Ripley from Alien. So Ripley, Alien, right? She was one of the first, and then Aliens followed that up. So Aliens had the Rodriguez character or whatever, right? The strong female girl, and then had that quote from Aliens where it's like, hey, has anybody ever mistaken you for a man? Right? Sort of thing. And then she goes, yeah, has anybody ever mistaken you for a man? Sort of thing. That's the quip that they come back. But you see, with Aliens, it's a great example. Now, Alien is a great film. Aliens was a great action film as well. But this is all dealing with, in fact, I'll do that in a completely different thing, dealing with what Alien is actually about, which has a lot to do with the matriarchy and the takeover of the females. And these are very interesting themes that have popped up over and over now, where women are now completely adopting male characteristics and are becoming the heroines of all these films. So, getting back to the characters here in this film, how awful the male characters are. We've got the doctor here, which is his name is Dr. Sertain here, and he is a character that has inherited Michael Myers, if you will, and since Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance, and one of his best roles, Donald Pleasance, great old time school actor, who really did a great job with the character of Dr. Loomis in the first two Halloween films. And I think they brought him back for the fourth one, if I'm not mistaken. And he's just so iconic and all that. But anyways, they killed him off. And here he is. This is the guy that has taken over. It's interesting, in one of the first scenes, they have this massive checkerboard where they're outside. And they've got these characters as well. This guy here playing I believe it's a reporter who is trying to get Michael Myers to react. So they have a scene where they're at the asylum and they're out in the massive checkerboard here, and this guy pulls out the Michael Myers mask. Michael Myers got his back to him. He's not wearing the mask or anything, and he pulls out the mask and he says, "You know what this is, feel it, react to it," sort of thing. So these characters, again and again. Here's another example. This is the guy that plays you would be patriarch of the family, sort of thing, the father of the granddaughter. So, the Laurie Strode's son-in-law, if you will. And he is just a weakly, just extreme beta male. There's a scene where I think he cut his finger and he says, "I've got peanut butter on my penis." And it's just another extreme beta male character who is completely dominated by the women in his life. He's always taking orders. He's worse than useless. He is like literally worse than useless in this film. And they have more and more characters in here. Every male character that's in this is just terrible here. Let's see. There's the Oscar character. So here's another character, one of the friends of the granddaughter, who is this, pudgy little beta male who's wimpy, in terrible shape, has a low self-esteem, and is just there to be the butt jokes, right? He's just a cliche character. And again, every male character in this film is depicted as a beta male, or even as an emasculated male. And this is what they're doing with the male characters. And this is no accident, because this all fits into the narrative of what Hollywood is trying to do. They want to redefine what men and women are. The Baphomet itself is, and I'll put that in for a second here, just to show you. This is more for people that are not used to my work. The Baphomet is transgender, basically, right? So for transhumanist and what they're bringing in, this new world order that they're bringing in, they are going to have a future type of human race through transhumanism, through the CRISPR babies, that are going to be one sex, basically. They're going to bring the two sexes together. And so for now, before they can fully bring that up around, this transhumanist sort of future human being, which they're showing to you everywhere if you're paying attention to it, they are conditioning people into accepting men, and they're normalizing men being women, essentially. So all over YouTube, all over Facebook, Twitter, everywhere you go, you're going to see this emasculation of the male. So like the, what was the GQ magazine, right? New male. The new male character, the new masculinity here, I did a video on this, this is the new masculinity. It's turning men into women, right? Reversing the roles. So this is how it all is coming out. GQ magazine says new masculinity is men wearing earrings, giant sleeping bag dresses, and crying. Yes, all around you, that's what you're going to see, because the people that run this new world order are not, they don't like us. They want us off this planet. They want us to stop breeding. They want to weaken us, and they want to turn people against each other. So they want to turn families inside out. They want you to think that the concept of family is archaic and unsustainable. They want you to live in tiny homes or in sewer pipes, like casita homes and stuff like that. They want you to embrace 5G and stuff like that. They want you to embrace living in their mega cities where everything is, they're bringing the 5G and everything else, the surveillance grid that they're laying out. And they want men to become women and women to become men. And they want us to always be at each other's throats. That's why every day that you're in this world, you're going to see stories like Me Too all over, right? Me Too times up over and over again. These are straight out of Hollywood. They come from Hollywood. It's created by our controllers. And they're used to program women against men. And I showed in my video yesterday where, the new type of females that they're programming women into, not having children, putting career first, working in glass towers, and that theme plays heavily in this film with the Laurie Strode character. She is dysfunctional. None of her families work. Like, she's been married before, but it doesn't work, right? And this is the norm. So if you're somebody that you're probably somebody that watches a lot more of the shows and movies that I see, especially in this day and age. But tell me, how ubiquitous is this theme where it's dysfunctional families? How normal is it? Do you ever see movies or films depicting families that have been together for, to raise children and grow old happily and functioning? Do you ever see that in films? Even when you see The Rock, he's always in these brainless action films that code in all this New World Order programming. Even when The Rock is saving someone from a skyscraper, it's his ex-wife, right? That's part of the story. Or he's got an adopted daughter, or you know how it is. And they're normalizing these things everywhere. They're normalizing the destruction of the family. The family nucleus is being replaced. The future human beings only the elites will be allowed to have them, and they will be highly mutated. They'll have the CRISPR genes, which will give them an extreme superiority, and they'll have the transhumanism as well. And this is where it's all going to. This is in many ways what the Equality Act and the Bill C-62 in Canada is all about. It's about putting the bills in, or putting the laws in, into the legislation that will protect the future types of human beings that they're going to have, and programming the masses into this. So the way that I see the Halloween reboot here film is that Michael Myers represents the patriarchy, and they burn the patriarchy. That's what happens in the film, right? That's the three women, which is almost like three witches at the end. They watch him burn, or they don't really see him burn. And I don't really care if it's spoiler. It's over a year that this movie's been out. You're not missing anything. It's a piece of crap anyways. But Michael Myers to me represents not in the original one. The original one was a smaller idea, and it was a cool idea, and it was more about making an atmospheric horror film. And as I said, the mask was explained. The whole thing was explained through the situation at the time. I think it was an independently financed film. So it's a different realm now. The realm now is the Disney realm. You're in the Disney realm. So these projects are from the major players of the New World Order, the major mind controllers of the New World Order, and they are chock full with these agendas. So just like I said, the anti-gun, the gun control agenda, the boy that would rather, be in dance class than out shooting with his father, which is insane, really, because any boy that would be out shooting with his father would be spending valuable time and would probably really cherish that. In fact, I'm sure some people here would chime in and say, yeah, my dad used to take me shooting, and that's how we bonded. But now the young boy says, Dad, I don't want to be shooting anymore. I want to be in dance class. And if you have a son that wants to be in dance class, well, that's, probably he's under heavy mind control. Probably you'd have to clean out his diet and make sure he doesn't head down the rainbow alley, which is eugenics. So I think Michael represents the Whiteface that I showed you before now in this current iteration of Halloween. And that the toxic males in this film, every male that is depicted in this film is depicted as weak and incapable, devious, like the doctor character, who I didn't really touch on too much. I had him here for a second. I can't remember what happened to him. But the doctor character that I showed you before had some sort of sick, obsession with Michael Myers. And then he all of a sudden flips and becomes a murderer himself because he wants to feel what Michael Myers feels. So I believe that what you have in this film is that you have a depiction, a purposeful depiction. There's the Danny McBride character who wrote this hideous piece of schlock. These are the female characters here. I think this is just more of the people behind the whole film. But you have a film that has a very negative portrayal of men. It's interesting, this symbolism too, because the one eye symbolism, which is everywhere, and the one eye is the one world, the one government, the New World Order itself, right? That's what it symbolizes, the control of the world. So they always show this with the V right here coming through. And, you know, in many ways, Laurie Strode becomes a killer, right? She becomes, and you think about her character too in this film, where 40 years, so they ignore all the other history of the other films, for better or for worse, and they make it like, okay, he only killed 5 people on that one night way back in 1978 or something like that. And so for 40 years, she's been prepping for him. 40 years. So she's the prepper now. And she's got all these traps and booby traps, and she's living in a gated house way out in the hills, and she's prepared for the apocalypse, which manifests, of course, in Michael Myers. Michael Myers, MM33, right? And it's kind of silly, really, when you think about it. It's like, you'd think after a few years, you'd start to say, you know what, maybe he's not going to get out, after a few years. Maybe I should just go on with my life and live my life and all that. But no, she is a victim of male aggression. Me Too times up. So all these things come together. In fact, that's what Laurie Strode represents in this film. She is the Me Too times up. She is the woman that suffered from male aggression way back in the past, and she has become militant. And she will do everything she can to protect her offspring from that male aggression. In fact, her mental illness is her superpower, much like Greta Thunberg. And everyone that doubts her realizes in the end that she was always right. That male aggression, that white male sort of aggression, would rear its ugly head again, and it would only be because of her militant, determined sort of militant attitude, the unwavering sort of militancy that she has adopted as a character. And in fact, talking about heroines and female heroines, I could also bring up the character from the Terminator series, another series that doesn't know where it's going or coming or going or whatever. It's just dumb. I think you could take the first 2 Terminator films and just from there and get rid of everything that came after, and that would have been fine. But that's not the way it works with your mind control, right? You grew up with something, you have something, you see it when you're young, it has a big influence, it'll be brought back over and over and over again. So they have to, well, for them, it's a no-brainer because it's going to be money no matter what. The franchise itself has a certain fan base that there's a guaranteed amount of income that's going to come in. But in many ways, the Laurie Strode character is a mirror image of the character from the Terminator. What was her name again? Sarah something. I can't remember her last name, right? That she was the character that in the second film, in the first film, she was more or less just a regular sort of young woman working in a diner sort of thing, right? Trying to get by. And then in the second film, she becomes this militant sort of bitch from HELL sort of thing, who is hell-bent in protecting her offspring from the impending danger. In fact, there are so many similarities between Halloween and the Terminator. In fact, you could say that in many ways that Michael Myers is kind of like a Terminator, and he might have been the first Terminator. I'm sure that James Cameron was heavily influenced by the original Halloween films when he made his first Terminator film, which is an excellent film. The first Terminator is the best in the series. The second one's the second best, and all the rest are just garbage. But nonetheless, these themes coming back and again and again, now where we have the women that just can never get over, the women that becomes the male. She becomes the protector, right? The defender, the aggressor in many ways. So in many ways, this little teaser here, it's almost like she's the one that's behind the mask. I don't think that's accidental at all. I think they're very clever in the way that they do these things. Kind of like in Luke Skywalker, when he goes and he slices open in the cave there on Dagobah, he slices open the mask of Darth Vader, and he sees his face. You're your own worst enemy in many ways, right? So in some ways, you could argue that Laurie Strode kind of becomes a Michael Myers type character in the film. So yeah. Anyways, thought I would do this. I wanted to do this actually last year on this film. I wanted to come back and slam it back when it first came out. I never got around to it for whatever reason. So I saw it again recently and realized, you know what? It's got to be talked about. So I want to know what you think about this. What do you think about the male characters in this film? Did you see what I see? Did you stop at some point and just say, is every male in this a complete pansy, useless butthole? Aside from Michael Myers himself, who is a psychopathic murdering, What did you think about that? What do you think about the Halloween films in general? Do you see any of the other films having merit? Are you like me? Are you like, I like the first two and maybe the fourth one occasionally, and that's about it? I like the third one as a completely different film, maybe, sort of thing, with some cool ideas and some cool scenes. What do you think about all the other iterations of Halloween, the reboots, the resurrections, the Rob Zombie white trash films? I think Rob Zombie missed the point entirely of what Michael Myers was supposed to represent in the original film. I think it couldn't have flown more over his head, where he's like, no, I have to give him a backstory. I have to explain why he's a complete psychopath that wants to kill everything he sees. And so I'm going to give him the worst white trash family you could ever imagine, the most cliched, off the wall, just ridiculous sort of thing. But what do you think about these things? I think film, for me, is a way that I can maybe reach more people. I mean, maybe a review like this can get a few more views and a few more people might come in and see my work and then realize what I'm trying to show folks. Typically, if I would do this, I would love to show you clips of the film. I would love to show you the sequence with the father and the son driving in the pickup truck with, talking about the guns and the dance class. Because I think those are, there's no other way that it makes sense. You look at the film and you say, well, this film has agendas. This film is pushing agendas. This film wants the men to be boys or to be girls, basically, right? They want that. This film is reversing the roles massively. All these films are, though. It's not just one. It's not one and done. It's all around you. They're transforming our world. This is Agenda 21. They're depopulating. They're taking control of human reproduction. And this manifests in all their entertainment, all their products, their cereals, their cartoons, their toys, Lego, right? Their Marvel comic books. Everywhere you're seeing the rise of the female heroine adopting the masculine characteristics, the She-Hulks, the Miss Marvels, right? All the characters, even the old sort of alpha type male characters like Wolverine, are being killed off symbolically on trees and stuff, and then they're being replaced by their cloned sort of hybrids, female characters, like in the film Logan, which is another film I'll have to come back and review at some point in time, because I think it's a pretty important one to depict many of the agendas of the New World Order. Make no mistake, the New World Order is all around you, and it is emerging, and we are all going to have to come to grips with the ways that they are changing humanity forever. The CRISPR babies are a fact of life. The cloning is a fact of life. The brain chips are already here and already being implemented. We are going to see a radical shift in human beings. This targeting of white people is everywhere. Everywhere you look, you're being told that you have white privilege, and everywhere you're being coded that white people are bad, white people are evil. So many of the films now are depicting, so many of the news articles from your Disney media are depicting white people. Everywhere you look, you're going to see killers now, mass shooters, Dylan Stormroof churches, these types of characters, those types of stories that come out of the Brothers Grimm that you get on your CNN and your ABC News and your Fox News, your make-believe media. These scripted stories that might as well be a Hollywood movie for all their validity. And how they mirror exactly what they're showing you in the films and in the television shows. How all the shows, The Watchmen, another recent example, are depicting this, the toppling of the patriarchy, right? The transformation of the women into the male, the transformation of the male into the women. All this is all around you. You cannot deny it. If you just open your eyes, you can see it, and none of it is even remotely natural or good for us. It's bad for us. So be careful of your entertainment and be hypercritical of it. And don't be afraid to, go against the grain. The grain is the herd. It's the sheeple. You're supposed to be ignorant. You're supposed to, appeal to the majority or want to fit in. That's how they condition people. Don't parrot your mind control. Don't go around and be a South Park meme. Start to think for yourself and start to look through the agendas that are being pushed in these New World Order productions. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen. I hope you got something out of it. I really look forward to reading your comments on this one. As I said, I'm a horror movie fan, so I'll be doing a podcast. In fact, I'm doing KJ Osborne's show tomorrow. That's going to be 3 p.m. Eastern on the scariest movie ever. And I'm going to be looking to do a Halloween podcast because I didn't get to do it last year because my channel was taken down or whatever. So I'm going to be doing a Halloween podcast, maybe on Halloween, in which I will examine the New World Order themes of these horror films, which I like to do. And so I'll let you know on that. But as for now, stay tuned tomorrow for Scariest Movie Ever. Look forward to getting on with my buddy KJ, of course. Maybe we'll discuss some of this stuff. Let me know what you think about these movies. What other movies do you see that have the same themes? What do you think about the Whiteface that's all around you? Right? How much has Halloween changed? How much do you feel that they have exploited these pieces of art like the original Halloween film to no end, right? They've taken these films that we grew up with and they just exploited them over and over again. It's like, you'd like to think that some things can remain sacred and you just leave them where they were and they're just perfect like that, right? Some of our classic horror films, Nosferatu, well, it's been rebooted a million times, but nobody goes back and, well, actually they have tried to do it. But you can go through a lot of classic sort of horror films and just say one and done would have been the best way to do it. And then sometimes the remakes can be quite a bit better. The Thing, which is another John Carpenter film, one of my favorite horror films, sci-fi films of all time. Excellent remake. The Fly with Jeff Goldblum there. The David Cronenberg remake is a superior film to the original in almost every way, even though the original is still a really good film. But sometimes the remakes can be really good. But it seems now that we've gravitated away from that artistic endeavor and we become the corporate sort of machine of the New World Order's taken over, so that there are so many hands involved in the production of these things, but yet these giant media corporations are the ones that control the entire project. So every one of these films now is chock full of their agendas, whereas in the past you could have independent filmmakers like John Carpenter go out, scrounge up some money, some actors, some cast and some, cameramen and stuff, and start piecing together a film that they just came up with, sort of thing, and that they're writing on the fly, and maybe they hit magic, right? Like that. That doesn't work this day and age. Film has completely changed. So let me know what you think about that. What are your favorite horror films? What do you think about this remake or this reboot of the Halloween franchise? And what are your thoughts on the male characters in this film? If you watch this film, tell me what you think. Were you as disgusted as I was by how weak and feminine and just useless or worse than useless that the male characters were? And if you can, please come and support me on Patreon. Links in the description. Really helps me a lot. It's as little as $2 a month, and you help me pay my bills and put food on the table. So a huge thanks to all my patrons, everyone that supports this work that I do, and I look forward to reading your comments. Have a wonderful day. All the best.